What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about this. What I believe is the best location lighting setup for me and maybe for you. Now, every image that you just saw was lit with this setup. And it's also the source for one of the biggest questions that I get asked, especially since the recent video that went on my buddy Taylor Jackson's channel, because I was using this setup. So there was a lot of questions about one, why, but also how. And so in this video, I'm going to walk through why I'm using this setup, as well as how to actually get everything put together, because it is sort of a Frankenstein setup with a bunch of different parts that I just kind of had lying around. But it actually works pretty dang good. So let's dive in. So the first thing I want to do is talk about why, because there's two specific reasons, and one of them might not apply to you, but the other one most definitely will. So the very first reason that this sort of like came to fruition is because I use the Sony A9 III, which has a global shutter. And if you reference one of my older videos where I kind of walk through the intricacies of flash timing and how when you get into really high shutter speeds, you're not actually able to capture all of the light that's happening within that curve, because you're essentially just taking like a little tiny slice of that because the shutter speed is so high. Now, because of that, when you're shooting one of these flashes at something like full power, you actually gather the same amount of light as if you're shooting the light at like 1/8 power. And so because of that, if you are shooting at 1/8 power and you want more light, you can't just turn up the power of the flash. And so to sort of remedy this, that's why I decided to go with this double flash system, because I can go into a session with one light turned on. And if I get into that, that situation where I need a bit more light and I can't just turn up the power, what I can do is just turn on another light. And so it basically gives me an extra stop of flexibility. There's also some intricacies as far as adjusting flash power, because adjusting flash power doesn't really work the same when you're working with higher shutter speed. But if you want to dive deeper into that, definitely check out the video that I have. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Now, the second reason is because, having 400 watt seconds of power up on top of a light stand can be quite a lot of weight, especially when you start adding things like modifiers and all of that fun stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I do is very location based. I do a decent amount of traveling, and so I don't want to have to lug around this big heavy lighting setup in addition to a big heavy light stand that can manage this. And so breaking the two pieces into separate entities, I can have this on top of the light stand, and I can have this like heavier battery pack type thing down at the base. So what this does is it allows me to have this kind of like lighter setup on my light stand, so I don't need as heavy duty of a light stand to hold this up. But also having all of the weight down at the base of the light stand allows me to have this like lighter light stand be more stable, because the weight is kind of like holding it down. Similar to putting like a sandbag on a light stand, this is essentially acting kind of like a light stand, giving a little bit more weight down at the base of the light stand. And so what this does is it allows me to use my two favorite light stands. So the main one when I'm traveling is going to be this. This is the Cheetah Stand Mini. And the reason why this is my go-to light stand for traveling is because this is small enough that it can fit within a carry-on bag, but also can fit within just my like little roller bag that I usually check. And so I don't have to have like a whole separate bag just for, a larger, more robust light stand. When I am doing more location stuff like local where I don't need to fly, then this is going to be my light stand of choice. It's not that much bigger than the Mini, but this will not fit within a suitcase, at least the like carry-on roller bag that I'm used to using. But the reason why I like this one is because it's still small, it's still light, but this is the Cheetah Stand C8. And so what that means is it is an auto stand. So the legs open and close automatically, so I don't have to mess with that, especially when you're trying to move a light stand through receptions or crowded areas like cocktail hour. You don't have to worry about banging people's shins or having to like put the light stand down and reopen it every time you want to move the light stand. And so this is very handy. Highly recommend. Now from here, what I want to do is break down exactly how to get this set up. And so there's two separate parts. Now the two main things that you're going to need is obviously two Godox 8200s. For me right now, these ones are the 8200 Pro. And then you're also going to need to purchase the extension heads. And so what that is, it's basically just a piece where the flash head removes from the 8200 and it attaches to this cable. Okay. And then likewise, the cable attaches to the light stand here. Let me go ahead and kind of take it apart a little bit. Okay. So this extension head attaches to the battery part, and then the other end connects to the flash head. Now from here, in order to have these flash heads connected together, what I'm using is the mag ring from MagMod. And this is traditionally used to attach to 8200 Pros like this, and they just like stick in here and you would have like a setup like this. Okay, but again, that is a little bit too heavy. And so instead, what I've done is I have attached the MagMod little piece that has the magnets in it that's rubber. Okay, and so what this does is it magnets into the mag ring. And then there's also this little like locking mechanism here, and you just have to like move this cable out of the way so it can shut. And so this kind of locks it into place so that it's a little bit more secure. Now, another thing worth mentioning when talking about the mag ring in comparison to things like the Bowens mount adapters that can attach to flash heads and stuff like that, is that I can use all of my traditional MagMod modifiers on this. So with the heads attached, I can still attach things like gels, spheres, and I can attach grids and all of that fun stuff. I've even done setups where I've attached like one color gel on one light and a different color on another for something a little bit different. Which brings me to another topic worth mentioning, is that if you were using this double setup and you are going to be front lighting someone fairly close because they're two separate light sources, you could potentially see like a double shadow. And so this type of thing would be best with the light pulled back a little bit further so that those two different light sources could kind of meld together. Or use something like a softbox or umbrella, or maybe even like a mag sphere, just to kind of blend those two light sources together if you end up running to an issue like that. I've also, on these extension heads, they come with just little like mounting things. So if you were to just like attach this to a light stand, which I'll get into here in a little bit, you can also press a button and these kind of like move up and down. So I've attached the little copper mag shoe piece here so I can connect this to my light stand individually if I want to separate it from this little setup, which I do occasionally, and I'll get into that again here in a little bit. When it comes to connecting the two flash units together, the initial way that I did this was to use one of these little guys. It's like a little 1/4-20 male and male type piece. So what I've done is just screw that into the 8200 here on the 1/4-20 on both sides. And so what you do is I essentially just screwed them together so that they mounted like this. Now, the only issue with that is that when I wanted to detach this to like separate them, I have to like unscrew them, and it became a whole entire process, especially when you have like cables running off of them. So in order to unscrew them, you have to like take the extension heads off, and it's just kind of a long drawn out process. And so because of that, I was looking for a way to attach the two flash units together that gave me a little bit quicker access to separate these out. And so what I have found is I just so happen to have gotten one of these little things from Condor Blue at a Sony event. And so I attached it and actually worked really well, but I believe it's called like a quick release something. I'll link to it in the description, or I'm probably going to show like a little picture of it here on the video. But what it does is it has this little like sliding mechanism. Okay, so one is like a little male end and one is a female end, and so it just kind of like slides in, and then there's a little lever in here that I can click, and so it's locked into place. Now, the only issue that I've run into with this setup is because these are still kind of screwed into that quarter 20, is that in use, like if I bump one of these flash units or something, every once in a while, they'll get loosened like this. And so what I have done is I just got these little like cable management things with a desk that I got that's like Velcro on both sides. And so I just wrap that around real tight just to kind of keep it from moving around. And so that's the only reason why I use these, just to keep it from moving around and accidentally becoming unscrewed like it just did when I was demoing that. And then from there, what I did is the good thing about the 8200s, the Pro and the Pro 2, and I believe the non-Pro version have them as well. But there's a quarter 20 mount on the bottom, but there's also a quarter 20 mount on the side. And so I've just used these little like hold fast D-rings, and I've screwed these into the side of each 8200. And then I just connected a little hand strap. And so I can just hook this hand strap onto my light stand to hold these down at the base. Now, a better option might be something like a monster clamp or something where you can actually like fasten it to the light stand. The only issue is that it's hard to mount both lights to that monster clamp with just a single quarter 20, because this one's, you can only mount like one to it. And so that's why I have found that the strap just works better for me. It also, again, I don't want to be adding a ton more weight. The purpose of this whole entire setup is to have like as much power as possible while still being light and maneuverable. And so adding, you know, more clamps and fasteners and stuff like that just makes things a little bit more bulky and cumbersome. And so that's why I prefer the strap, but that's an option if it's something that you wanted to explore. Now, moving on, the way that I connect all of this to the actual light stand is going to be with the MagMod mag shoe. And so if this is the mag ring, there's a little kind of like a hot shoe looking cold mount here. This just slides into the mag shoe, and then this connects onto my light stand. Now, the reason why this is ideal for me is because, one, I'm using the mag ring to attach both flash units to. I couldn't really find anything else that really worked super well. And so the only way to attach this to a light stand is with the mag shoe. But another benefit is that if I don't need the bulkier double flash setup, I can simply just remove this, and then I can use something like another 8200 Pro that has the attachment here, and I can just slide this in. And so now I have just like a lighter, more traditional single flash setup. If I know I'm not going to need the bulkier, more powerful setup. So when I walk into, you know, something like getting ready, or if I'm going to be taking portraits inside the ceremony chapel or something like that, I don't need a ton of power. And so something like this is going to be a little bit more manageable. And so I will just remove the bigger setup and attach something like this. Moving on to why I like to be able to separate my two flash units is because, one, sometimes when I am out with this like bigger, more bulky setup, I want to separate both lights so I can use them as two different light sources coming from two different directions. And so what I can do is, because I have the little connector on both of these little extension heads, is I can actually just attach this onto a light stand, and then I can attach the other one onto another light stand. And so even though I traditionally use these in a single light setup, it's very easy for me to pull them apart and break them into a double light setup, again, without having to carry around extra lights just for the sake of carrying them around in like another bag or something, since it's one setup that I can like break out into two setups. Also, because this is significantly smaller than something like this, I can fit this little light into different places that I wouldn't be able to fit this. Also, because this is very small and light, I can kind of like wedge it into areas. I'll show a clip here where I've wedged this in between a wall and a lamp that was on a wall, just so I can like mimic this light being on, even though if I was able to turn this light on, it wouldn't be enough power out of a little light bulb to give me what I wanted. But, 200 watt seconds of power is enough to kind of, mimic this like after dark being lit with a lantern light type of look. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get about this setup as well is power loss, right? Traditionally, when you break the head away from the pack and you have the power running through a cable, there's going to be a little bit of power loss, and there is a little bit of power loss on this. My buddy Rob Hall did a video that I just watched because I wasn't sure, and I don't have light meters or anything like that, but in his video, he said that there's about 0.2 to 0.3 of a stop loss using the extension cable, and for me, that's perfectly fine. It's not a ton of power because the cable is only, I believe, 6 feet. If you have like a pack and head system with a much longer cable, then you will get a little bit more. I think with I used to have the 8600 Pro version, and I think that one lost about a stop of power. But again, the benefits of this setup vastly outweigh losing 0.2 stops, because again, especially with using global shutter at much higher sync speeds, having a little bit of loss is mitigated by being able to combine two different lights, because I wouldn't be able to just turn up the power like you would with a traditional light setup. Also, again, having a lot more weight down at the base instead of up on top of the light stand is another main reason, because even before this setup, one of my favorite lights of all time was the Elechrome ELB 500 TTL, which is again a pack and head system for literally the exact same reasons. But unfortunately, that light just doesn't work with global shutter very well because the trigger doesn't support it. But that's a whole other video and topic of discussion. But yeah, hopefully you found this useful. If you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. And again, I will link to all of the pieces that I use to build this system in the description. And keep an eye out. I have a video coming up after this where I'm going to walk through how I took an image that would be almost impossible if it wasn't for this setup paired with my global shutter. So keep an eye out for that by subscribing, ring the bell, like, comment, all that fun stuff. But yeah, catch you on the next one.